What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the MPower Show. I am Markeith Braden and my co-host,
Donzalay Powell.
and we thank you for joining us today for another brand new episode. We are always overjoyed that you decide to watch these episodes, leave comments, and even like and subscribe our YouTube channel. Well, today's episode is all about mental health. We're recording this during the holiday season. And we know that this is a time when there are seasonal depression that goes on. And not being one who suffers from seasonal depression, but I do know that there's much anxiety from friends and family members that I know who suffer from anxiety. And I also can kind of tell a change in my mood during these times. It gets cold and different things like that. And so, I can definitely understand how some people can be battling with this. What about you, Donzale? Do you know individuals who kind of suffer from seasonal depression?
I do. I've seen that before, and even for myself, I'll say I love the summer, even though it's
Mhm.
real. Obviously it's really hot, but I do. I like to exercise outdoors more than indoors. So sometimes you get that fresh air and stuff. So sometimes you're like you said, it's cold. You want to stay in the house, stay under the covers, and
Yeah.
so I can see how that could be a little battle sometimes.
Well, today we have another guest, and we're coming to you a little bit differently this time again. We are virtual, and we're trying to switch it up here and there for the episode. Sometimes we're in person recording, and sometimes we will do virtual, especially when we have guests that we want to bring on the show. And our guest is a mental health professional expert, and she's going to be sharing some ways that we can practice and develop habits in battling seasonal depression or even just battling some of our moods that shift during this time of the year. And so we're going to go ahead and bring in our guest. Hello, hello, hello. How are you today?
Welcome, welcome.
How are y'all
We
doing?
doing great. Well, I'm doing great. Donzale, you doing great?
Doing good, doing good.
Awesome. Well, we want you to take some time to introduce yourself. Let us know how you show up in the world each and every day.
Okay, all right. Well, my name is Tempest Merriwether. I'm a licensed professional counselor. And I actually went into private practice 2 years ago. So
Hmm.
I've been in the mental health field, 13, 14 years now.
Wow.
But I decided to go into private practice after COVID hit and all that other kind of stuff. And so now, I specialize in depression and anxiety. I always tell people because whenever I get on these things, then everybody's like, "All right, let me get in contact with you." I am like pretty booked up quite a bit during this season.
Mm.
But like I always try to, get people in where I can at some point and everything. But I'm in the Murfreesboro area.
Okay.
So, I'm not in Nashville, but I do a lot of virtual stuff,
Mhm.
and things like that. So graduated from MTSU, as undergrad and then went to Lipscomb actually for my graduate degree.
Awesome.
So
Awesome.
that is me. Married, Eric Merriwether. I feel like everybody knows my husband. So
Okay.
like I always feel like I don't need to introduce him, but some people may not know him. But married, two babies, all that good stuff when I'm not being in therapist mode. So
And for those of you who are watching via YouTube or various channels, know that Donzale and I are from the Nashville, Middle Tennessee area. And so if you hear guests say that they're from our area, it's because we're from this area too. So if you see more guests from Nashville or Tennessee, then it's because we're from here. But, we will have guests all over the
Mhm.
country as well. But sometimes you have to start at home first before you spread abroad. Spread abroad. So, the first question I have, because you just brought it up in your introduction, what is the difference between anxiety and depression?
ah. Well, that's a pretty easy one. So depression is going to think you're going to be thinking about like your downer, or numbness. So you're going to have trouble sleeping. You're going to either feel sad. For men, it actually shows up more as anger, irritability. So a lot of times men will just be irritable and angry a lot and don't know why, when it actually is depression. For women, you're going to see more of the sadness, the emotional numbness, things like that, changes in appetite, no motivation to do anything. You're gonna, just feel like people deal with feelings of worthlessness during that time, feeling like you're failing the people around you, things like that. The anxiety side, you can kind of think of more so of being an up. So you're going to be constantly worrying. You're going to be, your mind is constantly racing. A lot of people feel like panic. There's actually where people have panic attacks where you could just be sitting still doing absolutely nothing at all. And like your heart rate increases, you start getting shortness of breath, you start hyperventilating, things like that. And like, you don't even know what happened. And this can go on for 15 minutes. And so, you're thinking more about your being up when you're thinking about anxiety, not up as in happy, but just like wired. Wow. And things can't think straight, worry, that sort of thing. So depression is kind of your downer. Anxiety is going to be more amped up and things like that.
Because I know my mom, she talks a lot around having anxiety. And I honestly, when she would talk to me about it, I never really understood, like, what are you anxious about? Like, what is going on, like, there, And, my mom's in her 70s now, but it's something that she's talked about pretty much my entire life. And very healthy woman, very functional woman, but she has always had problems sleeping since I've known her, right? And I just had never really fully understood anxiety at all.
So when you think about it I'm gonna throw a little neuroscience at you. The amygdala is the part of the brain that causes the anxiety. Okay. So the amygdala is what tells you when, if you're walking in the woods and you see a bear and you run and or freeze, that's your amygdala telling you to do that. Your amygdala is your survival instincts. So you're going to either, they say, fight, flight, freeze, and now they've added another one called fawn, which is people pleasing. But fight or flight. And so what happens for people with an anxiety disorder, or like people who are like, I have anxiety, their amygdala is overly hyperactive. So they may not be doing much of anything. And yet that part of their brain is telling them something's wrong, something scary is happening, and you need to figure out what it is. And it can be absolutely nothing going on. And so people don't know like what's happening, but it's really that survival part of your brain just kind of, going a little haywire. So,
wow.
Yeah. So for instance, when your mom couldn't sleep, like her amygdala was just up, like something's wrong. Like you need to be like up running, like something's happening, but there was nothing really happening.
Interesting.
So let's say there is something happening. Maybe not as dramatic as the bear in the woods, but let's say there's some type of chaos or going on in somebody's life, or an instance that is making someone feel extremely uncomfortable. Would that fall into the anxiety category, even though, I'm just trying to make sure I have a clear definition, because it sounds like it can be a couple of things going on.
Yeah. No, I mean, we all get anxious at different points. We may not live in that state, but we all have anxious times. You know what I'm saying? We all feel anxious at different moments. And yes, it can be just like that momentary, like just fear. Anxiety is going to be more of that mental running, the worry, the constant fear, things like that. That's what more of the anxiety is going to be versus just that momentary, like, oh no, somebody, was chasing me and then I was running. You know what I'm saying? So there is a kind of difference in that. And that's kind of the difference between having an anxiety disorder and then just being anxious in the moment. So I can explain it like this. So you got your moments where something is really happening. You may be in danger or like a bill is not paid or something. And so you have that momentary like, oh gosh, I got to get that, I got to get this done. I got to get this paid. Then feeling anxious is, well, you've been thinking about that bill for a week now, trying to figure out how you're going to get it paid. Now you're experiencing some anxiety right now. You're anxious. And you've been anxious for a week, maybe two, if you've been worrying about that bill. Somebody with an anxiety disorder worries about the bills all the time, even though they got paid last month, and they just keep worrying that the bill, that anything can happen and you're all of a sudden not going. They may fear that they're going to get laid off. They may fear, like, it's just always like these endless scenarios of things that could happen. And they really literally can't cut it off. It just does it. It just goes. And so there's a lot of neuroscience behind that I won't bore y'all with, but
Interesting. So what is it about the holiday season that kind of brings on additional or extra, for lack of a better words, depression or anxiety for people?
Yeah. Well, on the depression side, we have the actual season. So it's colder. We're losing daylight. You just want to snuggle under the covers and do absolutely nothing. And so this season, the lack of vitamin D, we're not getting outside as much. We're probably not exercising as much. We're not eating as well. You know what I'm saying? All these different factors are playing into it. Then the holidays come and everybody's not having like this wonderful experience around the holidays. People have lost people. People have like nobody to celebrate the holidays with. People may be going through divorces. People may like the marriage isn't going well. Like just all different kinds of things can just be going on, and the holidays can magnify that. I don't know if y'all saw that one year. I think it was 2020, but like everybody had the matching pajamas on. And it seemed like everybody bought those matching pajamas that year. Well, if you didn't have anybody to wear matching pajamas with that year, you just may have just felt like, I'm all right, I'm handling this, but I want some matching pajamas. And so people are just dealing with at that time that it's supposed to be a time of family. It's supposed to be a time of togetherness. People joke that it's cuffing season, and it's just really a time for people to come together. When normally in the summertime, people may or may not be thinking about togetherness,
right?
In that way. And so it creates a lot of different emotions for people.
So is this impacting more single individuals than it would be maybe married? Or do people who are in relationships still experience it as much as someone who's not?
So I tell people all the time, and I know single people be like, girl, be quiet. But I tell people all the time, nothing is more lonely than being in a relationship and still being by yourself. So yes, people are in relationships. The relationships are not going well sometimes, and they may have even posted the pajama picture, but there's a lot of things going on. And so if that is going on in your relationship, then although you may be portraying to the rest of the world that we're having this great togetherness moment, you may really not be. And so that can create some feelings. And then for my single people, you're typically more by yourself. And so unless you're close around family and stuff like that, you may feel a little bit of loneliness. And then sometimes you can get around your family and your family asking you why you're not in a relationship. And you're like, none of your business. Stop asking me this. And so it just creates a lot of different feelings. But absolutely, people in relationships can be experiencing just as much loneliness as people who are single, quite honestly.
Yeah.
So, question: what's your thoughts on stigma? Obviously, I think that we've moved a lot more towards talking about mental health, trying to bring it to the forefront a little bit more, but I think we still have a lot of room to grow. So, but that's for me. And obviously, I'm not a professional. What do you think about it? Is this becoming more of a common topic, or are people able to really express themselves and share?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think it's definitely becoming more of a common topic. Now, people specifically saying that they have gone to therapy, people may or may not tell people depending on like the situation they're in or who they're talking to. But it is definitely like, even in the last 2 to 3 years, like I saw a big change. And I think the pandemic did that. I think everybody was like, okay, we stuck in this house. There's this thing going on that nobody knows what's happening. We don't know when we're going to get out of here. Some people were stuck in the house with people they didn't want to be stuck in the house with. Like it was just so many different things going on. And so I think it forced people to say, okay, we're going to have to do something different. It's and then going back to even people being in the house together, if there was like family issues and stuff, that made people go, oh, see, we've been able to ignore it as long as we was going off to work and you had to go to school and you had to do that. But now we was all stuck in the house together. So it did. It made the conversation way more frequent. Now, my folks who dig their heels in, like that older generation, they still digging their heels in. And you can try to educate, you can try to do all that, but at the end of the day, a lot of times they're just stuck in what they're stuck in. And so all I can say is for our generation, we are healing, we are breaking generational curses, we're doing different things, and I think that will help the next generation. So sometimes people may have issues with their parents or, a aunt or uncle that's older. And I tell them, you may not be able to fix that person, but if you can heal, then you can keep from passing that on, you know what I'm saying, to future generations or even just your friends, or, you know what I'm saying? You're not bleeding all over everyone else that is around you. So
That's good. As you were talking about single, being in a relationship, I'm single and I have no problems being to myself. I have never had any problems being to myself. Honestly, I never really began to start feeling lonely or alone because I think they're different.
They are different.
Until I became an entrepreneur. Because I was so accustomed to going to a job every day, right? And when I was working professionally before I got laid off, I would always go to the professional organizations, or we would go out to dinner sometimes after work and all these different things. But when I became an entrepreneur, that kind of shifted because I'm at home now building my business via online or speaking engagements, and everybody else is at work.
Right. Yeah. So it feels like you got your needs met by being out with other people. It didn't have to be in a relationship, but you just enjoyed other people's company still.
Yeah. And so that whole phenomenon for me really didn't come. And I still say that today. I'm like, man, entrepreneurship, and you will hear a lot of entrepreneurs say that it can be a lonely journey, because a lot of people just don't really understand the things that you have to do to build a business. Or some people, I would get calls from my mom sometimes, or other people who didn't think you were doing anything just throughout the day. And I'm like, well, I'm getting work done. I can't stop and go, do this or that. They just think you have a whole bunch of free time. But that's the only time I really started to feel it was when I started working for myself.
Yeah. And so that feeling that you had then, a lot of people may be experiencing that in different capacities for different reasons. Yeah. And so depending on the level that it is, it's like people are like, okay, like I'm going to have to go and like talk to somebody about it, because it can get really dark. And for people who deal with depression, even like, it can be described as like somebody just dropping a metal blanket on you. And you can't get it off. You know what I'm saying? And so it can be real tough.
Because I'm gonna be honest with you, the pandemic really was a godsend for me, because I didn't have to go anywhere. Because at the time I was very active in ministry. Prior to really going full time, I was in full time ministry, and one of the things that I actually was happy about was that I didn't have to go to the church.
Yeah.
And I know some people will probably be like, I can't believe he's saying that, but I'm serious. Like, I went to my very first worship experience last Sunday since March of 2020.
Yeah. And so probably with your busyness and everything, you just got a chance to finally just be.
Yeah.
And so it was a nice break for you. And people did experience that during the pandemic too. Everybody didn't have a mental health crisis.
Yeah.
Some people were like, oh, thank God. I can get some downtime. This is nice. Yeah.
It gave you a reason to sit still.
Yes. So a question. I want to look at the difference, of course, between men and women. So I'm going to assume that with females, we're more likely you have your girlfriends that you can at least talk and share with to some degree. Now, of course, depending on what it is, whether or not you want to share. With guys, it seems like it would be a little different. They don't really want to talk about their feelings, and definitely don't necessarily want to talk about it with another man. So there's different nuances, I think, that happen there. Do you think that women being able to talk more with girlfriends, or even a mother figure with another woman, do you think that helps them with being able to cope better, or are both still, is that not necessarily enough regardless?
I think it may not be enough depending on the level. If you're just dealing with regular life stuff and you talk to your friends and your friends give good advice, then it might, that might be fine. But when things start getting to a certain heightened place and it's like it's starting to affect your actual functioning day to day, then, it's like, okay, well, we might want to really talk to a professional about it. Or if it's certain things that you may not want to be discussing with friends, whether it be because you're just like, I don't want to be too much of a burden, or, if you are talking about your relationship, we always say, do not tell the people closest to you all of your relationship business, particularly if it's like bad stuff, because you're going to forgive him and you're going to go back. And then all your friends going to be like, see, I don't like him. You know what I'm saying? And so that puts a lot of negativity in the water. And so I don't recommend not talking to anybody, though. I say, have those trusted friends that truly help you problem solve. But then that's where a great space for a therapist comes in, because a therapist is going to help you with communication skills and yada, yada, yada. For men, yes, they are a little bit behind us when it comes to the communication thing. It is getting better, though. A lot of men are coming to therapy. Like they are coming to therapy. They are more willing to talk. I think, unfortunately, among men, that typically hadn't been a safe space with each other. Dudes aren't going to say certain things around a group of men. It's just not going to happen. You know what I'm saying? Whereas girls will sit around and somebody will start a conversation and we'll be crying and everything else. And so that does create this thing for men where they're dealing with the same stuff women are dealing with, but they can't say anything about it. And it's, to me, like, it breaks my heart, because I'm like, y'all are dealing with the same exact stuff. Like, life is just as hard, especially for Black men. Like, life is just as hard. But you don't have anywhere to go and say, I can't hold it together right now. I can't be, the provider for everybody. I can't be the backbone for everybody. And that's really hard for me. And also why a lot of men just typically check out. I was talking about that earlier today. Like a lot of men, rather than to say, I'm failing, I feel like I can't do this, I don't know what I'm doing, rather than say things like that, they will just bow out quietly. And, you know, as women, we're like, why he just leave? He just left. He left his kids, he left his, and, you know, we beat them over the head, but it's like, not making excuses for it because there's no excuse for that. But men genuinely don't feel like I can say, I don't know what I'm doing, or I can't do this, or I don't, like, there's no space for that. And women will even get mad at men for being honest about that. So depending on the woman. So sometimes women aren't a safe space. Yeah, sometimes women aren't as safe of a space as we think we are. So
what I've seen, I think, more common here lately has been men, they will express that they have a lot of pressure on them. I've seen people post about that. They'll basically like, they feel like you kind of how you talked about the weighted blanket. Like they just got that, and they never really expound more on, you know, how they're working through that. They just kind of say it and leave it and then go on. But yeah, I've seen that several times from different men.
Yeah,
so I'm not
because
sure
it's socially, because it's becoming more socially acceptable now for men to say, man, it's a lot of pressure. I just got a lot going on right now. And that's becoming more socially acceptable. But you're right, they're not expounding on it still. And so it's not really getting enough attention. And so they do end up just kind of still suffering in silence, really.
And you are seeing more male professionals who are in the space of mental health doing a lot of different things as well. I know I did on my other podcast, I had mental health guests to talk about men's health and different things like that during Men's Health Month. And so it is, you know, something that many men don't talk about. Because when I think about it, I'm like, I don't know that I've ever had a moment where I've told anybody that I was like overwhelmed or burdened with anything. It's so interesting that you bring that up, because when I think about it, I just am of the mindset, or I was raised in a way, being the oldest of four, that you just figure it out. Right? You just figure it out. There's nothing that I can't figure out. And I've had my ups and I've had my downs financially, personally. But for me, how I've always got through things, and I've never actually had therapy before. I guess I'm kind of like Oprah. Like I learn from other people as well. I read a lot, but I always have faced my problems this way. That because I'm very spiritual as well, if God brought me through this, then whatever challenge I'm sitting in front of now, I have enough of a track record. This is just me, Marquis, speaking. There's enough of a track record for me at this point to know it's just for a moment. It's just for a season. I was talking to a friend of mine just the other day about financial challenges. Because I have always been the type of person personally that I'm going to exhaust every effort of my own before I ask somebody for help. It's just engraved in me. I don't know how it got there, but I'm going to think through everything I can do first before I ask somebody to help me. And 9 times out of 10, I won't ask.
And that's how most men are. Like, I think y'all are raised to believe that kind of vulnerability is not manly, and it's seen as shameful. And so when men are taught that, then when you genuinely can't figure it out, because it's not something that can be figured out at this moment.
Right.
It can destroy, you know what I'm saying, a man. And that's why, and And I'm glad you brought up God, because I always tell people, I agree. Like, because you're like, I just pray about it.
Yeah.
Yes, do pray about it. Absolutely. And I say, God is the source, hands down. He is the source, but he uses resources.
Yes.
And so if you are, if you fall out in the floor somewhere and you know what I'm saying, you need help because your heart is hurting, you call the ambulance and you go to the hospital. That's a resource. God is the one who's going to ultimately heal you. But it's that ambulance that's going to physically drive you to the hospital. That surgeon is going to physically, those physical things. And so I say the mental health is no different.
Yeah.
Yes, God is going to heal your mind, but it is that therapist that is going to talk you through the communication issues. They're the one who's going to say, okay, well, this is the diagnosis that you're dealing with. This is the treatment that we give for it. And this is how you start to feel better. And so God is most definitely the source, but he uses resources. And I think sometimes we're just like, we're trying to forego the resources in an effort, honestly, to save face. We really don't want to ask for help. If we broke an arm and we could not go to the hospital, we wouldn't. In fact, Black folks didn't for a long time. You just went there, put Vaseline on it, and you go in there and lay down, take a nap. So it was definitely a time where like asking for help was not a thing, but it's like God puts people in our life, a financial advisor. When you're struggling with your finances, you don't know what you're doing. You haven't studied investing and life insurance and all that stuff the way an expert has. But people, especially men, will be timid about going and asking a financial advisor for help even. It's like, nah, I can figure it out. It's like, there's no way for you to spend the same amount of time studying this stuff that an advisor has. And so it really can kind of handicap us in a lot of ways to not be able to use each other community-wise. And say, okay, I do need help with this. So you the financial advisor, you're the therapist, you're this, you're that, like, and let's all just come together and help each other. It really does hold us back to not people.
Now, I can't say I've gotten, in my 40s, I've gotten much better at allowing people to help without people who want to help. And I don't even ask, because I used to have a problem with that. I'm like, I don't need no help, but allowing people to help you, things that you were talking about, like finance. I've always sought out coaches, consultants, things like that for business. But when it came to, I think, personal things, and I don't know for me if it was, like I said, I'm only speaking personally. I don't know for me if it was, I was ashamed. I just honestly felt like, have I done all that I can do to help myself? Because I didn't want to get into the habit of always leaning a certain way when I got in a certain situation. Because I think sometimes that can happen where you feel like you have the crutch. And I'll share just a little bit, and then Donzale, you can take it from here. But during the pandemic, for the first time in my life, in my adult life, I relied on my mother to help me. Because when the pandemic hit, clients were taking pay cuts. They were saying, hey, I don't know if I can continue this monthly thing. And things began to shrink, right? And it took a lot for me to be like, Mom, this month, I need a little help with the mortgage. I need a little help with the car note. I'll get you in March, May, I'll catch back up. But if it were going to get paid, somebody had to help me pay it. When that pandemic hit, because I just didn't have it. And then, of course, all the other things came with the PPP and things like that to help entrepreneurs. But it was the one time that really helped to shift my mindset around, well, that's what family's for. That's what friends are for. That's, to help you in your time of need. And that kind of helped me to shift my mind around allowing people to help you during hard times. because that was probably the first really hard time I had in my life to date.
All right.
Yeah.
I just say I was on a panel recently, and we were talking about how sometimes you basically you get knocked down. So you have those times where you're just like, what in the world am I gonna do? Like it just seems so overwhelming, right? And we were talking, and one of the things that I said, and similar to how Markeith had said earlier, because of the track record that I know is temporary, even though it's still like huge in your face in the moment, it's temporary. And I was just suggesting to the audience, I'm like, one of the things that I've learned, especially for myself, is don't sit in it. Like, don't sit in it long. If I need to cry, need to do whatever I need to do, have that. And I like to mention, I'll have my homestyle bakery almond cake, take me a nap. And by the time I get up the next morning, I'm just fine. That's for me though. I know people have different varying depending on what it is, but I just mean to say I try to bounce back quickly, because the longer that you wait, the longer you lay under the covers in the bed, the more days that go by. And somebody did mention on the panel as well, yes, I got to the point where I did stay in too long, and they did need therapy. They did start talking to somebody, and how much it helped them. So I was appreciative that they spoke up to kind of mention that, because again, sometimes people are scared to say that. They're just scared to be like, yep, and it helped. So yeah.
Because we're taught that that's weak. And it's like, when people finally come to me, because a lot of times it's been some obstacles to getting there. When they get to me, they're just like, this just doesn't feel good. Like I'm not being as strong as I feel like. And I said, how hard was it to come here? Like, what did you mentally have to fight through to pick up a phone and say, I'm not doing well? And like the amount of strength that takes is strong. It's easy to act like ain't nothing wrong. I ain't gonna like to go around and be like, I'm fine. I'm put my makeup on. I'm post a picture on Facebook, social media, whatever, and like act like everything is fine. Most people do that until you just can't anymore, of course.
Yeah.
But like that's the road that everyone takes. It's like, oh, just put on, fake it till you make it, all of that. To decide you're going to be vulnerable and break down, as like you saying, Markeith, asking your mom, like, I'm proud of you, because I'm like, that was something that was difficult to do, but that was strong. That took for you to say, I am going to put my pride aside and I'm going to get this done. And that is still figuring it out. It said, as a man, I'm going to figure it out. You still figured it out. You very much figured it out. And so it's like, that is strong. And so I tell people, the fact that you made it here, you stronger than a lot of people, because a lot of people just exit stage left and never ask for help.
Yeah, that's so good.
Okay.
So as we come towards the end, I know I want you to give us a few tips, but I also want to talk about social media.
Yes.
And mental health. And seeing what we see today, and so many people get into this comparison syndrome, looking at what we believe people's lives to be and start comparing ourselves to them, especially even during this season. You talked about relationships, cuffing season, this, that, and the other, not knowing whether or not these people are actually happy with the people that they're with. And so talk a little bit about the impact of social media on mental health.
Ooh, that's a whole nother session. So I try not to villainize social media too much, because like money, it literally is a neutral thing. Like, it is an inanimate thing. We are the ones using it, and we are the ones that are putting anything on it. We are the ones dealing with it. It's our perceptions, all of that. So social media in and of itself is neutral. It's what we get on there and do that is making it healthy or unhealthy. And so a lot of times with comparison, seeing is believing. As much as you may know on some level that people may or may not be telling the truth, or they may not be the whole truth or whatever. At the end of the day, what you see is typically what you believe. So if you're constantly seeing people, it's like, oh, this person got a promotion. This person, bought a new house. This person had a baby. This person got married. This person's business is skyrocketing and they just bought a yacht. Like, if you're constantly seeing that stuff and you're not able to reel it back in for yourself, it's going to affect you. And I'm seeing that a lot, especially in that 21, 22 to about 50 age. Like, that age range, like, we are feeling the pressure. Like, we are feeling the need to constantly be booked and busy. We are feeling the need to feel like we are constantly accomplishing something. And it could be accomplishing anything. It could be accomplishing, you're getting your PhD. And then for my more hood folk, it could be accomplishing being a great dope dealer. Like, it's just all across the board. Everybody's feeling the pressure to be doing something better than the next person, And so a lot of times I tell people, instead of saying, oh, I'm just going to get off social media altogether because it's a part of our world now. It is what it is. I say having social media hygiene. And so having times where you cut off the social media. You have times where when you notice yourself, like if you get on and you were fine when you got on, and then all of a sudden you just don't feel right anymore, then just go ahead and get off of it, because it's likely something that is triggered negative emotions. And so getting off of it, I recommend not getting on it first thing in the morning, because we roll over and pick our phone up. And I recommend not doing that, at least spending the first 15 minutes to an hour before you pick up your phone. But just being able to reel it back in, because social media is wreaking havoc on our mental health. Even what we saw with politics and everything. And one thing I learned was, with the algorithms on social media, they show you more of what you engage with. Mm-hmm. So if your struggle is you want to be married and you're single, right? Mm-hmm. Your struggle is you want to be married. And so you like a picture of a family. You're going to see more pictures of families. Mm-hmm. You didn't try to. It's just that because you interacted with that picture, the algorithm did its thing. And now it's going to show you more of that. If you click on somebody who likes to shop, it's going to show you more advertisements and stuff where people are shopping. And so a lot of us didn't realize it was going on that level. And so you're seeing more of whatever it is you interact with. And if that stuff is something that's actually not making you feel too great, mm-hmm. you're seeing more and more of it. And so, I try to educate people on the algorithm stuff. We talk about social media hygiene. I do tell people do social media fast from time to time if it's something that's just like you're just not in a really good place and social media is making it worse. But across the board, social media has caused an increase in depression. It has caused an increase in anxiety, especially among young folks. I really hate that like the young people are on it, because, when we were growing up, the cheerleader or, the dude that had all the good clothes, you may have compared yourself to them, but that was about it. Now these young kids are comparing themselves to women in LA who are Instagram models who had BBLs done and job, all these kind of body work, and they airbrushed and all this. And you got a 13-year-old comparing her body to that now. Yeah. And it is very disturbing. Very disturbing. So while I say I try not to villainize social media itself, because it really is what we're doing with it, it can be something that's just really not a good thing for a lot of people. It's ruining a lot of relationships. People spending too much time on it. People finding ways to cheat on it. All kinds of stuff going on. So it is just a lot. So yes, social media hygiene.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I yes, we're not villainizing social media. I do want to villainize filters. I'm like, enough of the filters, people, because I don't want every picture I see of you as a filter. And then when I meet you in person, I'm like, that ain't
This
that
ain't what you look like at all.
this is not what you look like at all.
Yeah.
Like the filters have got to go. The filters.
So let me tell you about that though. So here's the thing. A girl can post a picture and it just be a regular picture, right? And she might get 60 likes on it, right? That's a lot of likes. But if she posts a picture with the filter on and she's at a certain angle and yada, 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 she's doing all the things, well, then she gets 150 likes. What does that do to the brain? Every time we get a like, we get that hit of dopamine. So if you got 150 likes on the picture where you was a little bit more sexier and all this other kind of stuff and you were filtered and all of that, then it does encourage you to do more of that. So my advice to men, because I hear men say these types of things all the time, stop engaging with the content if that's not what you want to see. Like pictures of girls that don't have anything on and you know what I'm saying? It's not their butt in the camera and stuff like that. If you really want to see more good girls, reinforce good girl behavior. Good girl behavior. But yeah, interacting with certain things is just going to increase it.
Wow, wow, wow. Well, we could go on and on and on and on this topic. We'll have to, have you back as a guest with some other mental health folks. But we always like to, and share with us, some of your final words, and also let us know how we can follow you on social media and learn more about your business. Even though you say you were booked till the end of the year, but
yeah, I do, and I hated to start like that, but I was just like, oh, I don't want people to start messaging me, and then I'm like, I don't have any space, and then people are like, well, I called her and she ain't got, so just trying to get ahead of that a little bit. Not saying don't reach out at all, but just understanding that it is very. A lot of people are coming to therapy, and it's a great thing.
Yeah,
it's good.
Yeah, yeah. It's good.
Following me on social media. So Tempest Merriwether, licensed professional counselor on Facebook. Tempest_Merriwether on Instagram. I don't interact as much with some of the other stuff, and there's so many different platforms. But those are two that you can definitely find me on. And then takeaway tips. I would definitely say being self-aware and take care of yourself. If you're not feeling well, if you're not feeling your best, check in with yourself and say, what's going on. It may not always lead to a therapy conversation, but if it's something where you just can't figure out what's wrong and it's something that's constantly going on, you really don't have to suffer in silence. And so it is strong to be vulnerable and say, I do need help. It takes a lot of strength to do that. And so don't think that it is weak to ask for help, because it actually takes a lot of strength. And so if you do need the help, I tell people, follow up with their insurance companies, because therapy and different stuff can get expensive. Find a therapist through your insurance companies to see if they take your insurance. Asking people, talking to good friends, seeing if they do have a therapist, because they do talk about, people are starting to talk about it more. If they talk about it, ask them who their therapist is, all that type of good stuff. But don't be afraid to ask for help, because suffering in silence is just it's not necessary. We don't have to. So
Yeah.
Don't suffer in silence. Well, Tempest, we want to thank you for joining us and sharing your expertise on this. We'll definitely have you back on to share with us more around these topics. But we never like to end the show without sharing some level of inspiration with you before we go. And Dazale, I'm going to let you start us out tonight on your inspiration.
Yes, I read this earlier and I felt like it was perfect for our topic today. So be strong enough to stand alone, smart enough to know when you need help, and brave enough to ask for it.
Wow.
So just sometimes it's fine to be alone, it's fine. But when you need it, go get it, go ask for it.
Yeah. And I'll leave with you today from one of my mentors when I was professionally working in healthcare. He was the Department of Health Director for the state of Tennessee, the general physician for the state of Tennessee, Surgeon General for the state of Tennessee. And he would always end every speech when I would hear him talk, your health is in your hands. Your mental health is in your hands, that you have to take the responsibility to acknowledge when you're not feeling well. You have to take the responsibility to acknowledge when you know you've had too much social media. You got to take the responsibility in your hands when you know you don't need that pork, but you need to eat something differently. Your health is in your hands, and you are the one person who can make the greatest difference in your life. So just remember that your health is in your hands. Well, this wraps up another episode of the MPower Show. Be sure to like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Click that button and get the notifications so that you know when we are uploading a brand new episode or even going live. We appreciate your support and we thank you for joining us on our email list as well. And just know that we are here to help empower you, to take you on an empowering journey. But until next time, just remember this: always shoot for the top because it's the bottom that's overcrowded. Take care.